This morning I wanted to talk about a crime that's called ransomware, and I think it's something that's pretty important to bring up just because with crimes in general, we get pretty good coverage and pretty good public awareness, and cybercrime is something that doesn't really get that exposure, particularly because people are often embarrassed that they became victim to it. A lot of them are sort of breached through maybe weaknesses in your systems, or potentially sometimes you accidentally clicking links or accidentally giving out information that you didn't know who you were giving it to. You thought you were giving it to someone who you trusted, but it was somebody else posing as that person. So we don't do a very good job of promoting exposure to cybercrime, and particularly ransomware, because it's a business attack. So very briefly, for those of you who don't know what we're talking about, it's we call it Cryptolocker a lot of the time, but there's a lot of versions of it. And essentially it's when somebody gains access to your IT systems and steals your data or encrypts your data, and then contacts you through a computerized system and says, if you want your data back, pay me $5,000 or however much money in Bitcoin. Now, it's not something that is always personal data or business data, but they do tend to focus on businesses because businesses tend to pay. So essentially they've stolen your data, no different to any other hostage situation, except it's your data, which we all know is very valuable. And then essentially you have to make a choice of whether you've got a sufficient backup that you can tell them to bugger off and just restore your backup, or you pay the ransom to get your data back. So again, it's something we don't talk about very much, but it happens regularly. We're seeing it happen more and more as data becomes more valuable. Where we are, obviously, Bundaberg, Maryborough, Harvey Bay, we still probably see an occurrence every week across the wider community, and we're in the nature of the business that we operate, we tend to be informed about it when other people aren't. But yeah, I guess I just wanted to raise it because there's no silver bullet as to protecting yourself. Obviously, there's great precautions you can take. You can ensure that you have sufficient backups. That's the biggest one. And obviously, you can make sure best practices are that we don't click emails or that have links to maybe Australia Post, or potentially you don't share information that you think might be a little bit suspect from an email. But there isn't a silver bullet, and the important thing to remember is a lot of people get angry with that, because particularly in the moment when you've just lost something and you have to pay to get it back, they get angry with that because they think it should have been preventable. But the important thing to remember is it is a crime. It's not, you know, if it was a game of sports, you can practice and you can put in measures and you can make sure you train and you know what the opponent's going to do. But this is a game of sports that has no rules. And in all sports we have referees, and in this sport there is. I mean, the Australian Federal Police and other organisations do try to prevent it, but not after the fact. And again, it's like any other crime. So the thing to remember is this is somebody who's breaking the law. This is somebody who's stealing from you. It isn't 100% preventable. So the trick is to make sure you have things like backups in place. Make sure you know best practices. Make sure you educate your staff on the importance of protecting their data. It is just so valuable to your organization, and there's a lot of statistics out there about businesses folding after major data losses, and that's because we live on data these days. So have a think about it. Make sure your business is protected from cybercrime, and if you don't know those best measures, obviously reach out to somebody like ourselves to ask how that happens, what you should put in place. But it is important to remember that there isn't always a way to 100% prevent it, so make sure that if it happens, you've got contingency plans. Cheers.